All right, let me start off by saying this to you. Being a general contractor can be a huge problem, especially when you rely on federal contracts. And then the more unique the work that you do for the federal government is, the more you're at risk based on decisions by people who live thousands of miles away from you. Let me paint the picture for you. In my area of Louisiana, I've had multiple contracts with the state of Louisiana and the federal government to build structures inside of national parks and forests, campgrounds, you name it, I've done it. The problem with the federal side versus the state side is the state of Louisiana will pay you your money. But the state side, the strings are pulled from Baton Rouge and you can get your money pretty quickly. The federal side, oh my goodness. When those jackasses up in DC get to arguing back and forth with their appropriation bills and slashing this and slashing that, you find yourself completely and totally out of work. And that's where I was when this encounter happened. Donald Trump had just got out of office. Joe Biden had just came in the office, and all of a sudden they started slashing work all throughout North Louisiana. Now, pause right here. Let me say this. I'm not blaming it on one person or the other. Frankly, I don't care what your political affiliation is. All I give a damn about is my money in my pockets. And I'm telling you the truth. At that point in time is when the slashing happened, because it slashed my wallet so bad that I couldn't pay my house note, I couldn't pay my car notes, and I couldn't pay my insurance. I'll take a few small jobs for the state of Louisiana doing repairs at rest stops, but then everything dries up. I mean, across the board, everything dries up. My wife and I had a little bit of savings left, but everything just happened at a bad time. Her dad had recently gone into the hospital and we dumped a boatload of money on keeping him alive. And it was just the perfect financial storm. We braved that storm for about 6 months when I get the word that we're going to restart the construction inside of this national park. Now pause right here and let me say this. I'm not disclosing which national park and forest I was working in, because I don't need you people butting into my family's business, trying to figure out who I am, running background reports and acting a damn fool and eventually making me kill one of you. Now back to the story. I get word that we're going to restart this project. This particular build was really simple. Clear the woods, make 3 campsites and build 3 cabins. So my team and I get started on this project. For the initial walkthrough, it's me, Broussard, and LeBlanc. Broussard's the kind of guy that drinks way too many beers, stays up way too late, and wakes up way too early. But you can count on him to get the job done. Now, I came from a family of crazy folk. All of them were loggers. And I don't know if you've ever been around loggers, people who spend time deep up in the woods molesting trees, but they tend to be a little bit off. And LeBlanc was the epitome of being crazy and off. I'm talking about the kind of guy who would fight 7 men and did not care if he got his butt whooped. But he was going to make sure that 5 out of 7 were in some serious pain. And so you'll understand, these two are my main guys. I have plenty of people who work on my crews, but I depend on the 2 of them to make sure that everything goes okay. We head out to the site to do a visit, and because of the federal delay, the area that we surveyed has now grown over. It was right here in this moment that LeBlanc, the crazy one, says, "Hey, I think they picked the wrong site to build this. There's something off about these woods out here." Now, had that come from anybody else, I would have taken it into consideration. But LeBlanc, being LeBlanc, I just brushed it off. Never thought anything about it. Wasn't anything major. It's him being crazy. So we fast forward, we restake the land. The crews go out, clear the land. And weeks later, we're started on construction of the cabins. Now, I don't know how many of you listening to the story have ever signed a federal contract, but a federal contract is designed to have a start and end date. That's what the bidding process is about. We're working on this project, and they send over an amendment to the contract. saying that they want this job finished 2 weeks faster than originally scheduled. Understand, I'm sitting in a truck on my phone looking at this amendment, trying to figure out what's in this for me. These no good sons of bitches only threw in an additional $5,000. Now, to you, it may sound like a lot of money, but to me, it's absolutely nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. In order for me to get this done 2 weeks faster meant that I needed to bring more people onto the job, or I was going to have to start physically working on this job myself. And that just so happens to be how I ended up on top of the roof of this cabin with LeBlanc, nailing down boards when we had this encounter. Imagine the scene. It's a Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m. We need to get this done. So I call LeBlanc and I say, hey man, I need to go out here and do this roofing work so we can close this up and get ahead of schedule. Now LeBlanc, being LeBlanc, says, man, are you going to pay me a little bit extra? I tell him yes. And the next thing, the two of us are on site doing roofing work. Now, mind you, it's just him and I in the woods all alone. We're talking, taking care of business. When all of a sudden, LeBlanc just stops and looks at me and says, hey, boss, I'm starting to get that bad feeling. Something's moving our way, boss, and it's moving fast, and we might want to get out of here. Stop right here and pause and let me say this. Prior to this moment, anytime LeBlanc said stuff like this, I would laugh. After this moment, every time we went on a job site in the woods, I would ask LeBlanc if he felt, smelt, or heard something that gave him the heebie-jeebies. But up until this point, I just thought LeBlanc was crazy. He was just being himself. So I get back to work. And I'm like, look, we need to finish this roof today. We need to get it done. There's only two of us. We don't have time to be playing spooky games, LeBlanc. So we get back to work. About 15 more minutes pass. We got our nail guns and we're starting to put shingles on top of this roof. When all of a sudden I see this look of panic on LeBlanc's face and he starts to slide off of the roof. Understand, we've been on this roof for hours and he ain't lost his balance, ain't slipped, ain't did nothing. And so now I'm looking at him trying to figure out what's going on. His mouth is wide open and it looks like he's trying to say words, but words aren't coming out. He finally gets his footing, starts to run back up his side of the roof and just points behind me. And when I turn around and look, initially, I don't see anything. That's how well camouflaged this thing was in the woods. I don't see anything at all. I'm like, LeBlanc, what's your problem? I'm thinking he's being crazy. I'm like, LeBlanc, what's wrong with you? There's nothing over there. And then he whispers, no, look next to the tree. Now I'm getting agitated. Understand, we're in the woods. There's a whole bunch of freaking trees. He says, no, the tree next to our truck. Now pause right here and listen to me. There are times in life when you come to the realization that what you believe to be true about the world is just not true. This was that time for me. I'm telling you right now, you could have never told me that things like this, creatures like this, existed. In fact, I don't even understand how people like you who listen to these stories function, really function, going into the woods or going out at night in the dark when you know and understand that this is real. Because I struggled with this for a very long time before I decided to tell my encounter. But looking over by our truck, right next to a tree, and I'm not 100% certain how tall this was because we were up on a roof. But I can say this to you. It was over 8 feet tall because my truck has a radio antenna in the back of it that I use for when I'm deep in the woods to keep in contact with my crew. And that antenna by itself is 5 feet long. You take the height of the truck from the ground and the antenna mounted to the back. It was a little bit taller than that antenna. It looked like a hyena standing on its two hind legs. And I remember the fur, the patches of fur in the front, especially in the waist area. And it's standing there leaning on a tree, not leaning like a person leans, but leaning one shoulder into the tree like it was going to push the tree over on us. And then it growls out. Now the distance between us and it, 30, 40 feet maybe. And this is me estimating. I didn't measure it. I'm just saying 30, 40 feet. I know it was about 10 paces to get to my truck from where we were if we were on the ground. And maybe it was 2 to 5 paces behind the truck. But all I can tell you is this thing is looking at us and it's growling at us. And then it drops down on all fours and starts walking in our direction. And the craziest, scariest thing about how it moved was it didn't move straight at us. It moved around the back side of the truck. I guess it thought it was going to be out of sight, but we're up high and we could see it. And then it starts to slowly rub its body against my truck and then peeks his head out around the front corner of the truck, looking up at us, closing in on us. Now remember how I told you my boy LeBlanc was crazy? I don't know what happened in his mind in that moment, but he stands up on the roof and he says, "You not finna fucking eat me out here. I am not dying in the middle of the forest. You are not finna fucking eat me." And he starts shooting at this thing with the nail gun. Now you can see this thing reacting to the first couple of nails that hit it. Clearly, it had a reaction to him. Was those nails about to kill it? No, but it definitely agitated it. So I stand up and start shooting at it with my nail gun. Now, if you've ever held a nail gun in your hand and squeezed the trigger and held it down, you know how quickly those nails come out and what velocity those nails come out of there. And so we pepper his ass with nails over and over again. But it wasn't until I started hitting it in the face with the nails that it turned and ran. Now listen, I'm going to summarize what happens next. The two of us slide down to the edge, grab it, hop off of the roof, no ladders, no nothing, get into the truck and leave. That following Monday, when work has to start again, I hire even more men to be out there on the site, out of my pocket, to get that job done. I was not being in those woods again. Now here's the crazy thing. We finished the construction of that job, and that site where we had that encounter is a place where your federal government, who I told about our encounter, where your federal government encourages you to bring your wife and your children to camp. That's how much they love you.